Right now, somewhere in low Earth orbit, there are over 6,000 Starlink satellites circling the planet. They beam internet to your cousin's off-grid yurt in Montana. Cute. But what if Elon Musk looked up at that constellation one night and thought, you know what would really complete this? A moon-sized superweapon. Elon Musk's net worth in 2026 is roughly $840 billion. The estimated cost to build a real Death Star is $852 quadrillion. That means Musk can currently afford approximately 1/1,000,000th of a Death Star. For context, 1/1,000,000th of a Death Star is a metal ball about the size of a Costco, and it can't blow up planets. It can barely blow up a birthday balloon, but here is the thing, Musk does not have to build the whole Death Star, he just has to build enough of one to terrify every government on Earth. So let's do the math on the most ambitious, most illegal, and most thoroughly over-engineered vanity project in human history. To understand how cosmically absurd this is, we need to talk about what the Death Star actually is. In Star Wars, the first Death Star is 160 kilometers in diameter. That is wider than the entire country of Liechtenstein. It has a crew of 1.7 million military personnel, 400,000 droids, and 250,000 civilians. It is functionally a small, weaponized country that floats. In 2012, economics students at Lehigh University calculated that just the steel for a full-size Death Star would cost $852 quadrillion, roughly 13,000 times the quadrillion, roughly 13,000 times the entire world's annual GDP, and at current global steel production rates of about 1.85 billion tons a year. It would take over 833,000 years just to manufacture enough metal for the shell, so the real Death Star is obviously off the table. Musk's $840 billion is a rounding error on a rounding error of the actual cost. But $840 billion is not nothing. It is more than it cost to build the International Space Station. 5 times more, actually. The ISS, the single most expensive object humans have ever constructed, cost about $150 billion and weighs 420 tons. Musk's fortune could theoretically build 5 of those. But we are not here for a space station. We are here for a space station with a giant laser on it. Alright, forget the 160-kilometer planet killer. Let's build what I am calling the Death Star Lite, a weaponized orbital fortress that is actually within the budget of a single, deeply unhinged, trillionaire-adjacent human being. Step 1. The structure. The ISS is 109 meters long and cost $150 billion. But the ISS was built using space shuttle launches at roughly $54,000 per kilogram to orbit. We are in 2026 now. Musk owns SpaceX, and SpaceX's Starship can haul 150 tons to low Earth orbit for about $90 million per launch. That is roughly $600 per kilogram, almost 100 times cheaper than the shuttle era. So let's say Musk dedicates $200 billion, about a quarter of his net worth, purely to hauling construction material into orbit. At $90 million per Starship launch carrying 150 tons, that buys him approximately 2,222 Starship launches, putting roughly 333,000 tons of material into space. For comparison, the ISS is 420 tons. Musk just put nearly 800 times the mass of the ISS into orbit. So that is enough raw material to build a pressurized sphere roughly 200 meters in diameter, about 2 football fields across. Not exactly a moon, but it is the single largest structure ever put into space by a factor of several hundred, and it is big enough to house 2,000 to 3,000 crew members comfortably. He names it X Station, obviously. Step 2. The laser. Now, a real planet-killing super laser would require energy output roughly equivalent to our sun. We cannot do that, but what Musk can do is mount a military-grade directed energy weapon on his orbital fortress. And that is not science fiction. The US military is already testing laser weapons in the 300 kilowatt to 1 megawatt range, with programs budgeted at $1 to $3 billion per system. Let's say Musk spends $50 billion on the most advanced orbital laser weapons program in human history. 10 separate high-energy laser arrays, each capable of disabling satellites, downing missiles, and, if focused long enough, starting very, very precise fires on the surface of the Earth. Is this a planet killer? No. But it is I can melt your military satellite from 400 kilometers up, and there is literally nothing you can do about it weapon. And that is terrifying enough. Step 3. Defense and crew. A floating fortress is useless if someone can just shoot it down. Musk spends $100 billion on a multi-layered defense system, electromagnetic shielding, radar-absorbing hull plating, point defense laser turrets, and a fleet of autonomous interceptor drones that make the Secret Service look like mall cops. He also needs crew. At $200,000 per year per elite contractor, a premium for people willing to live in space and sign a non-disclosure agreement that is thicker than the hull. A crew of 3,000 runs about $600 million per year. Step 4, the Starlink integration. Here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Musk already has over 6,000 Starlink satellites in orbit. These are officially internet relay satellites. But a network of 6,000 orbital assets is also the most comprehensive real-time surveillance and communication grid ever built by a private citizen. Connect X station to the Starlink constellation, and Musk now has persistent, global, real-time intelligence coverage. Every square meter of Earth, all the time. No government on Earth currently has that, not even the United States. Plus, in the running total line item, cost orbital construction, 2,222 Starship launches, $200 billion, weapon systems, $50 billion, defensive systems, $100 billion, defensive systems, $100 billion. Station assembly, life support, infrastructure, $250 billion. Crew salaries, year 1, $600 million. Starlink weaponization upgrades, $40 billion. Contingency/Musk impulse purchases, $50 billion. Total, approximately $690 billion. He still has about $150 billion left over, which again is enough to build the International Space Station from scratch, as a guest house. Now let's talk about everything that goes catastrophically wrong the second Musk actually tries this. Problem 1, the money isn't real. Musk's $840 billion is not sitting in a savings account. Roughly 95% of it is unrealized equity in Tesla and SpaceX XAI. The moment he starts selling hundreds of billions in stock to fund a literal orbital weapons platform, Tesla's share price does not dip. It goes into freefall. The entire tech sector follows. Financial analysts start crying on live television. We are talking about a market crash that makes 2008 look like a minor inconvenience. By the time he has sold enough stock to fund phase 1, his net worth is no longer $840 billion. It is maybe $300 billion. And his space station is now a half-built aluminum hoop with no laser, no crew, and one very expensive toilet. Problem 2, international law exists. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty, signed by 114 countries including the United States, explicitly prohibits placing weapons of mass destruction in orbit. The moment Musk mounts anything scarier than a flashlight onto X station, he is in violation of international law. The United Nations Security Council convenes an emergency session. NATO reclassifies SpaceX as a non-state hostile entity. The United States freezes his assets under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. His SpaceX launch license is revoked, which is a problem when your entire supply chain depends on rockets you are no longer allowed to launch. Problem 3, the US Space Force was literally built for this. The United States Space Force, despite sounding like a rejected Netflix series, is a real branch of the military with a budget of about $30 billion a year. Its entire purpose is to maintain dominance in the orbital domain. The moment X station goes operational, it becomes the #1 target for every space-capable military on Earth. And here is the uncomfortable truth. A 200-meter space station, no matter how well defended, is a sitting duck. It is in a predictable orbit. It cannot dodge. A single anti-satellite missile, which the US, China, Russia, and India all possess, costs about $10 to $50 million. Musk spent $690 billion building something that can be destroyed by a weapon that costs less than his Twitter acquisition. Problem 4, you still need to eat. A crew of 3,000 people living in orbit needs roughly 3.3 tons of food per day. At $90 million per resupply launch carrying 150 tons, that is a Starship launch every 45 days purely for food. Over a year, that is about 8 additional launches costing $720 million, just so people can have space breakfast. And we have not even talked about water recycling, air filtration, radiation shielding maintenance, or the psychological effects of trapping 3,000 mercenaries in a metal ball with no internet that was not built by Musk. Wait, he does own the internet up there. Never mind. So, could Elon Musk build a real-life Death Star? A full-size, planet-killing 160-kilometer murder moon? Absolutely not. Not if he made 1,000 times his current fortune. Not if every human on Earth pooled their money. The steel alone would take 833,000 years to produce. The power source would need to rival our sun. It is a fantasy, and it always will be, but a weaponized orbital fortress armed with directed energy weapons, connected to a global surveillance network, and crewed by thousands of private contractors, that is disturbingly within the zip code of his net worth. Mathematically, the budget works. Fine, the technology exists or is being actively developed. SpaceX already has the launch capacity. The only things stopping him are the global economy collapsing the moment he tries to liquidate, every military on Earth pointing weapons at it, and the fact that the Outer Space Treaty would make him the first private citizen in history to be classified as an international security threat. So in the end, Elon Musk cannot build a Death Star, but he could build something just close enough to one to make every world leader lose sleep at night, right up until someone spends $50 million on a missile and turns his $690 billion investment into the most expensive fireworks show the universe has ever seen. I'm David, thanks for watching.